Welcome to Detonation Point. I'm your host, Matt O'Neill. I was with the U.S. Secret Service for 25 years and retired as the Deputy Special Agent in charge of the Cyber Operations part of the Criminal Investigative Division. In Detonation Point, I'm going inside the fight against cybercrime, hearing directly from defenders in government, infrastructure, and enterprise who are racing to stay ahead, because cybercrime isn't slowing down, and neither can we. Welcome to Detonation Point, presented by Elastio. Welcome back, everybody, to Detonation Point, presented by Elastio. We have Stephen Dougherty, CEO of Rexxfield, joining us. Stephen, recurring guest. First, let's start with the IC3 report. If you're a listener and you're not tracking it every year, the FBI's Internet Crimes Complaint Center puts out a report listing basically the reported fraud amounts, fraud types, et cetera, et cetera. We've been tracking it since you and I started working together 9 years ago. Any big takeaways that surprised you?
It was very surprising to me. The one takeaway that, and I think this is just based on their reporting of it, I thought I would see a bigger number of account takeover loss, but they're also factoring that in as not just account takeovers. When I talk about account takeovers, I mean financial account takeovers. They include that as government impersonation scams and also bank impersonation scams. So they kind of split it across three different things, but that we're seeing just kind of run rampant right now in that space over the past, say, 3 or 4 months, because our bad actors are using that business enterprise model that I talked about with BEC groups. They're now doing that with account takeovers, right? You have specialized individuals in the space who are doing all sorts of different things. You have the people who are on the phone with the victim, right? Trying to convince them to give them the multi-factor authentication code to get into fix their account. Then you have teams that are actually flooding the banks with phone calls to block their systems. So they're actually even encouraging the victim, say, hey, hang up the phone and call your bank, right? So the victim hangs up the phone, calls the bank, but they can't get through because our bad actors are flooding the systems. So then they get a phone call back again from our bad actor. It says, hey, you couldn't get through to us, could you? And they're like, no. And they're like, yeah, we're having some issues. We're having a lot of this happen right now. So just deal with us over the phone here. And that's how they build in that level of trust. And then you have the same exact models with the money laundering, with now the synthetic identities being used to set up those bank accounts. You and I have been talking about that for years. But now instead of you have a disparate romance scam victim controlling a bank account, you'll have one actor control 100 bank accounts that he can move money in and out freely as much as he wants. And it's not being picked up by the banks to flag those fraud accounts.
So the one big takeaway for me was, and it was no surprise, was, when we started working together in 2017, the IC3 report had 1.4 billion in reported losses. And last year it was $20 billion. So what does that say to you? I mean, aside from the obvious, like we're collectively really, really losing. What other thoughts come into your mind when you see those numbers?
So my silver lining thoughts is that more people are knowing how to report these, which is driving that number up. We would find them in our day-to-day work and have a victim who had no idea they had lost money, no idea how to report it, and we'd have to coach them through that. Now I think the messaging has gotten better, that our victims know to report these to IC3, and also the responders, people like us, are able to say, hey, make sure you're doing that IC3 report so we can better track these, so we can really broadcast how big of a problem this is. So that's my silver lining. We're just getting better at notifying these, but also our bad actors are still getting way better at pulling off these fraud schemes. Just all the tools available to them, and we don't need to rehash all those because we could be here all day, but they're just getting so much more efficient at pulling these off because, as we've been saying for years, they're operating at scale.
One of the things that was interesting to me is I was listening to another podcast and they were talking about a different topic, but it made me think of crypto investment scams. And you guys at Rexxfield deal with victims of crypto investment scams, pig butchering, and related romance scams, things like that on a regular basis. And the idea behind it was something I never really thought much about until listening to the podcast, which is the sunk cost fallacy, which is where a person is reluctant to abandon a strategy or course of action because they've already invested heavily in it, even when it's clear that the abandonment would be beneficial to them, whether that's in a relationship, whether that's in business, whether that's in something. In your experience working both with the Secret Service and now at Rexxfield. Do you think that that comes into play in any of these instances with crypto investment scams where basically they're throwing good money after bad because it is that sunk cost fallacy?
Absolutely. Right. They don't want to abandon their course of action. And I mean, you and I, we're stubborn Irishmen, man. We don't like admitting when we're wrong.
Yeah.
And so many of these victims, they don't reach out until they've hit a time of desperation. They've already
Yep.
seen the red flags. They already have a feeling that what they're doing may not be right, but they think, hey, well, if I just keep pushing it, it's going to happen and pop back for me. It's that gambler's mentality. You have no problem losing X amount of dollars because you believe at that certain point you're going to get that big win and get that money back. So it's just that psychology behind it. Ronnie talks a ton about the psychology about that behind it as he really tries to delve into that route. I just don't have that. I don't know if it's the patience or the wherewithal to go that route.
Yeah, Ronnie is especially gifted in getting into the mind of a victim and things like that. And one of the other problems too that we've talked a lot about, and that it's pretty common knowledge, I think, or hopefully it is, how difficult it is to actually make arrests on international actors because of where they're located, how long it takes to get cooperation from foreign governments, things like that. There was just a recent sentencing on a case that you started working like 10 years ago. Can you kind of walk the audience through that specific case? Because I think it's a really good microcosm of what's going on and just also speaks to the difficulties in law enforcement and how we're actually combating these crimes.
Yeah. So that was the infamous Albanky / Fomukong / Aliyu case, has many names. It started all the way back in 2017. Before the JIOC even. It was when we had the Anti-Money Laundering Task Force.
Affirmative.
Yeah, yes, great name. I remember very explicitly Mr. Eastman comes walking out of his office carrying this Louisville Slugger, bangs on the side of my cubicle and goes, "Hey, find some good cases for WFO. We want to start pushing some stuff to them." Okay, no problem. So I started doing my usual thing, and I stumbled upon this great BEC case, and it was just about when we really started to take BEC seriously, and we just found the ultimate financial director. The person who was moving all of the money in the United States and getting it out. That went by the rap name Albanky. If you're ever bored, Google the Albanky experience. You can see his YouTube video. It's still up, thank God. And we were able to see how he was moving all of these victim funds from business email compromise attacks, right? He was setting up they called them drop accounts in the court proceedings, but they're money laundering accounts. He was having all of his buddies go out to the state of Maryland, set up a $50 LLC, take that one sheet of paper, walk into banks, and get bank accounts. And they had all these different ones. I mean, we indicted, I think, 11 people who were in that fraud scheme, but there was probably 20 or 30 different LLCs set up to do that particular thing.
All using the same information, right? If banks were talking to each other in any meaningful way, they should have been able to notice this unusual activity.
Yeah,
Fair?
the addresses,
Yep.
the nomenclature, because they were using terms like escrow or holdings or trading all in the LLC name to make it look more legitimate for the victims, because they were doing a lot of real estate business email compromise. And so they would create a LLC with the name escrow in it, open up a bank account, and insert that into a real estate BEC, and the bank account in and of itself said escrow. So victims were like, yeah, that's correct, it's an escrow account, and would move the money out that way. And so we had that great case just based on the US, right? And you and I both know these are internationally driven cases. We know the bad actors, the really deep dark, the big people are overseas. Well, luckily enough, we started seeing money go to one of our favorite places, South Africa. We have a very strong office over there with a very great Foreign Service National Investigator. And so we got him on the phone and said, hey, look, we're seeing this money come over. These are some of the phone numbers that we're seeing attached. These are the bank accounts. These are the names of the businesses that they're using over there. Can you look into it? Within a day, he's like, yeah, I know exactly who's doing this. We know him. We know what's going on. Okay, great. So that was 2017. We started getting everybody indicted about 6 months later, late 2017, 2018. Then you sent me over to South Africa in 2019 where we finally had enough to really get the boots on the ground information from what's going on over there. So from the South African banks, the telecoms, working through the SAPs, South African Police Services, and the Hawks to get proper vetted identifiers on our bad actors. And in 2019, we got all of those actors over there indicted. So from an investigative standpoint, our case was done by 2019. We had everything we needed, right? Now, we didn't get sentencing on the main actor, James Aliyu, until March of 2026.
Okay.
And to quote one of our favorite agents, Brandon Henderson, he would always say, "What does that tell you?" Very loudly. What does that tell you?
Yes. I know he listens too. I can't wait for him to just be like, "What? He nailed my Alabama accent."
What does that tell you? I won't even tell what that story is related to, but another day. Anyway, so we had this case done by 2019, right? And we were already moving on to the next thing, right? The next BEC case, and they've evolved from there into romance scams, things like that. But it just took so long from that indictment, right? We went over and picked him up in June of 2022. He wasn't extradited for another year and a half. James Aliyu, to the United States.
Where was he?
He was in
South Africa?
Johannesburg.
Okay.
And then he was extradited here to Baltimore.
Got it. Okay.
With the great help. HSI Baltimore was the ultimate case partner on this. So that's where we had him sent. And I remember one of the HSI agents said to Aliyu, "Hey, congratulations, you get to finally come to the United States, but you're going to Baltimore."
Crappy football team. You're coming to the worst part. Okay. And then did he go to trial?
He did not. I mean, the evidence was overwhelming against him. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about what he had done. We had everything proven out from not only the financial trail, not only the telecoms, not only the email search warrants we had gotten, all of that, but we had corroborating evidence from cooperating defendants who said, yeah, that's him. He was the one telling us to do all of this. So we had it all. We had the actual text messages, we had the emails, we had the money trail, and we had the human intelligence that really just was the nail in the coffin. So he pled guilty, and it took another half a year to get him sentenced, but finally we got that sentencing. And we got the sentence that I think was sufficient in that, and it definitely sent ripples and waves across the global community. I love being picked up by different Nigerian outfits talking about how this is a victory for everybody, and it's a picture of me. They always choose the worst pictures of me for their news articles, but...
You think it's a conspiracy?
Maybe. Who knows? Or maybe I'm not as good looking as I think I am, but...
You have a face for podcasts. What was the sentence?
So he got 90 months on top of everything. So he won't be out until sometime after 2030. And after that, he's going to go directly into an ICE detainer and be deported out of the country, probably back to Nigeria. And he's going to have some people to answer to over there, too, because he put a spotlight on a particular transnational organized crime group that does not like the spotlight on them. I don't know if you want to mention that name, but Black Axe.
Go ahead.
I'll say it. Black Axe. In fact, when he was being deported out of South Africa to be extradited here to the U.S., he said to our investigator over there, "My Axemen will know you sit behind these arrests." So he's saying Black Axe is going to come after you. And then in another case that we worked together with our South Africans, the actual zonal boss of Black Axe was the one who actually had initiated him into the confraternity and all of that. So we moved on to another parallel case just based off of this one initial case to see just how networked these people are.
We had Jeff White on the podcast probably 4 months ago, and Jeff's book, Rinsed, talks a lot about Black Axe, the origin stories of Black Axe, and coming out of Nigerian colleges and business professionals at the collapse of their economy when basically Europe pulled out. Really interesting. And then I think Ronnie talked a little bit also on the podcast about how violent of a group they are and how they're a true transnational organized criminal group with basically, what would you call them, like chapters or like all over the world?
Zones. Well, they call them zones.
Zones. Yeah.
But yeah, it's equivalent to a chapter.
Yeah.
And these zones are set up in all over the world. And then they even have like wannabe zones that they have to meet a certain criteria to even be called a zone. And they're here operating in the United States. Actually, if you took an overlay of like what you would consider money laundering in a lot of these crimes and overlaid them on purported Black Axe zones, they match up almost exactly.
Like Houston, wasn't Houston a big area?
Houston,
I'm
Dallas, Atlanta,
yeah.
Vegas is big now. They love
I
Vegas.
there was one part of Dallas, or just outside, like in the Dallas Fort Worth area, that the Metroplex is that what they call it? I don't know.
Yeah, they do.
But I arrested like 7 Nigerians, all living in one little suburb, and it
Mhm.
just seemed like it was an enclave. I never really dug down deep to find out if they had any ties to Black Axe or Yahoo Boys or whatever, but it was always interesting to like Flower Mound or something like that. Really interesting to me that like, all right, there's this one group of people with a disproportionate amount of fraud that was coming out of this one little suburban community outside Dallas. And also, let's be fair, Black Axe is a better name than Yahoo Boys. I think we've
Right,
pointed that out before.
right.
Yahoo Boys is objectively stupid name. So, especially now. Um, so did you see anything in the IC3 report or any other recent reporting that creates even more alarm bells for you on areas that you don't think either the law enforcement or the community in general are talking about enough?
The human toll behind this, both on the victims and the groups that are perpetrating the crime. Because as much as we can say, hey, look at the scam compounds in Southeast Asia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at the victims they're pulling out of there who've been human trafficked there. And it's a global problem of people being human trafficked. I mean, I think Aaron West talked about a Ugandan who was found there that
Mm-hmm.
had been trafficked to commit fraud schemes out of there. And so really, I want to drive home that, look, we need to look at this as a human rights, human struggle issue rather than the financial aspect or the cyber aspect. Really, let's start framing this conversation in a way that enhances that human argument and say, hey, look, we need to look out for each other because not only are there victims that are becoming financially unstable because of it, which is leading to all sorts of other problems, as we know, but even the people that are pulling this off are being human trafficked and victims in and of themselves too. So that's one thing I really kind of hope that can be focused on more through the messaging, through these numbers. It just shows how staggering of a problem it is. And people still think that cybercrime is this anomalous thing that happens on these computers, but they don't really think about or at least bring in the human aspect. And so that's one thing I really want to be focused on in the future here with these numbers.
And along those same lines, what about the continued rise in sextortion?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that we're just not talking enough about because it's kind of a taboo subject? But those numbers remain alarming to me. And that's a completely human challenge. I mean, kids committing suicide. Can you talk a little bit about what we're seeing from a national and international aspect?
Yep. We're still seeing the same playbook, right? These kids are on social media. They're easily contacted, easily found, and they're easily goaded into providing explicit material of themselves to bad actors who then want to use that to blackmail them because that's sort of the ultimate kind of, hey, I know I can get money out of them. I believe there's an Ivory Coast individual through one of a Secret Service case who, basically said, hey, you want to see me make $1,000? Watch this. And within 30 minutes, he had a kid sending him $1,000 because he was able to get a hold of explicit material posing as a female, said, hey, send me something to you. I'll send you something to me. And bing, bang, boom, the victim sent an explicit photo, and then that blackmail came back right away, and they just wanted to go away, so they made the payment, and that was it. And it's easy money. It's something that happens very quickly, and it's going to keep growing. And even like with Rexxfield, where we get contacted to help with sextortion investigations as well. And even our own internal policies about it have been a bit of a struggle to figure out, okay, we need to really be careful about what we ingest, that parents have to be involved. There's all these different things we have to put in place as well, which slows down an investigative response to these. And there's so much just consternation about asking for help with these fraud schemes that until we say, hey, look, ask for help. If you see something, if this happens, say something. It's not worth it to have something bad happen to you.
And then part of it too is like parents having access to their kids' bank accounts, Zelle, Venmo, all of that stuff, so they can see unusual activity as quickly as it happens. So, well, let's turn the page a little bit for the last sort of half. This week coming up is the NFL draft, and so this is the only cybercrime / Philadelphia Eagles podcast that I'm aware of until there are copycats that come out, which I'm sure there will be many. So the Birds are picking 23rd. Are they going to go with an offensive lineman? They have to, right?
I want them to. I mean, just look at when Lane Johnson plays and versus when he doesn't, and how that team just flies, right? When he plays, they win. When he doesn't play, it's a struggle.
Yeah.
And you can just see it. You can just see it. You don't even have to be an expert of the game to see, hey, why aren't they look the same? And the fact that one player has that impact. So they need to start really working to get him backfield. Right?
Yes.
So I think the smart move is to take an offensive tackle as early as possible. But Roseman, he gets creative, man. How he gets creative. So I know there's talk about a potential tight end too. That could be a playmaker as well. And, again, I think they're really starting to try to reload with the thought that AJ Brown's gone. I don't foresee him starting the season in an Eagles uniform. And so they need to think about, hey, we need another playmaker like that as well. So, they have the back end draft picks to possibly do both in the first round. They like to get creative. So I can see both.
What happened with AJ Brown? Or is it really not him?
I don't think it's all him. And I don't want to say it's almost compared to like with Bryce Harper, where he's feeling now, where he's not getting that full contract extension, that big thing about him. But I also think AJ Brown just gives me that grass is greener type guy. And he always wants to get to somewhere else. And I think right now, obviously, that's the Patriots with Vrabel, with all of that. I think that's what he wants. And that's what he sees is what he needs to hit that next pinnacle for him, which whatever, to each their own. We want players to be happy where they're playing, particularly in Philadelphia. I believe it's one of the best places to play as an athlete in any sport, really. And you got to want it. So I think he kind of looking to move on, and that's what he wants. And he's just going to be unhappy till that happens. See what we can process there. But I think they're going to do, 2 late first round picks. They have the fodder to back up. It's going to cost them a lot to do it, but they like to get those impactful players up front. And I think they love that Quinion Mitchell, Cooper DeJean model they did in 24. And they're going to try to do something similar. Whether it works the same,
offensive tackle and tight end.
Yep.
And then, okay. All right. So we'll see. A couple days.
Yeah.
It was Thursday night, right? The next piece, we're also a Flyers podcast.
We are.
Now, all right, so you think that they can beat the Penguins in a 7-game series?
I mean, I think they showed up what they needed to in game 1. I mean, it was loud in Pittsburgh, man. The fans there showed up, and the Flyers played Flyers hockey. It was physical. It was mean. They were in their face. They hit everything that moved. And so if they just can wear them down, remember, Gino, Crosby, Letang, they're older. They're older guys. They've been around forever, right? So just beat them up. Take that energy away from them. Be gritty, if you will.
Right.
Use that grit.
Who's your favorite all-time Flyer?
Man, John LeClair.
Yeah. John
LeClair. Yeah.
Yeah. Part of the Crazy Eights team. All right.
Yeah,
line,
the Legion
right?
of Doom, man. The Legion of Doom. John LeClair, man, he was just a tough nose, set up at the top of the crease there. You couldn't move him. Shoot the pucks at him. He would just deflect them, man. It was not pretty, but I think one of the ultimate Flyers hockey guys.
Yeah, I like LeClair. I like Tim Kerr back earlier in the days. And then Hextall. So when I worked at ESPN, Hextall was there, and you couldn't find a nicer guy. And I was a 21-year-old kid, really nervous, but here's Ronnie Hextall, and couldn't have been nicer. And he didn't have to be nice, but he was. He was a super nice guy. The teams, from what is it, like the Lindros, LeClair sort of era from 93-ish to 99-ish, really had opportunities that they went to the Stanley Cup once. But I think Scott Stevens probably played a large part in that by ruining Lindros' career.
Too,
yeah. Well, and also remember the one year that the Panthers.
The Florida Panthers, John Van Beesbrook, man. Golden days of hockey. You know what's a great breath of fresh air is seeing the game back on ESPN, and they captured the same music, and it just gives that just nostalgic feel, back in those days.
One of my favorite shows to work on was NHL Tonight. And it was John Buccigross was the host. And then
Barry Melrose on that?
Barry Melrose, yeah. And then they would have a player come in. And so, I mean, I got to see like Messier, and I got to see like all these guys because, Connecticut from New York, not too far. And then once the season was over, then you'd have basically players coming in and, sitting in. And then so we would do our control room was in a trailer, and we called it PCR 6, a post whatever production control room 6, and it was sitting outside. It was like the worst, but it was ours. And so I really enjoyed working on NHL Tonight at the time. So I think they can make a deep run. I mean, they're playing as well as just about anybody. And I think the winner of the Stanley Cup's coming out of the East. The West is kind of trash.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I think that they, especially, the last 6 weeks of the season, nobody was better than them, I don't think.
No.
So I think they could go deep.
One game at a time, man. One game at a time.
See. Or they could lose in 5. Who the hell knows?
Yeah.
Speaking of losing in 5, I think the Sixers are going to lose in 4. Or did they play a 7-game series? Are they going to lose in 3? Are they going to lose one more time and then just call it? Like, we don't even have to play again. I mean, do you follow the Sixers much?
A little bit. It's more so I'm on a bunch of my buddies were on Philly sports threads, so it all kind of intertwines, Like the Phillies thread is now, I switched it. I switched the WhatsApp picture from Bryce Harper to a picture of Gritty. I'm like, this is a Flyers thread now.
Yes.
Because it's been so bad.
Yeah. Well, they're 5 games under 500, and I mean,
but at least the Mets have lost 11 straight. So
yeah. Ever since they met Mr. met the mayor, they haven't won a game. So I don't know what that means, but that's been all over. So, well, Stephen, man, I really appreciate your time, and continue to do the great work at Rexxfield, my friend. We will definitely catch up to you probably during camp coming up in a few months. So
absolutely looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, buddy. Yeah.
Talk soon.
And thanks. And thank you, listeners, for listening to this week's episode of Detonation Point presented by Elastio. We'll see you next week. Thank you.